Hello, and welcome to this presentation from the Second European Conference on Education, entitled Educational Practice and Professional Identity Among Volunteer Correctional Educators, Becoming a Teacher Behind Bars. My name is Jeff Ritchie. I teach at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, where my research has focused on non-formal teaching and learning, particularly in rural communities. This research explores the challenges of developing a critical educational practice and nascent professional identity in a correctional facility, a context on the borderlands of contemporary educational practice. It is well documented that while the United States is home to only 5% of the world's population, it houses some 25% of the planet's inmates. And while the challenges posed by the U.S. corrections system are vast and somewhat unique, the challenge of creating and sustaining rehabilitative programs in a largely punitive correctional environment remains a global concern. This case study utilizes in-depth interviews, participant journals, and classroom observations to explore the experiences of 8 volunteer teachers working in a rural county jail in southwestern Pennsylvania. For those unfamiliar with Pennsylvania, it's a state in the northeast of the United States. The X here marks the general location of this study. This research focused on 8 volunteer teachers who have participated in a program coordinated by a local school district during one of the last 3 years beginning in 2011. As you can see from the slide, there were 2 participants in 2011, 2 in 2012, and 4 participants in 2013. Journals, observations, and debriefing sessions were held in each of these years, and follow-up interviews were conducted with all participants in fall 2013 and spring 2014. As noted earlier, this program was coordinated through the Adult Education Division of a local school district. Students included both males and females, taught in both gender-mixed and gender-segregated settings, focusing primarily on basic skills in reading and mathematics. Classes were offered for 2 hours twice per week in a traditional classroom setting, with road seats and a whiteboard at the front of the class. While designed as a 3-month program, in each of the 3 years included in this work, the program extended for an additional 3 months. Students were not permitted to use electronic devices of any kind, including computers or calculators. Items such as pencils and paper were closely monitored and accounted for. Before moving on to discuss teacher experiences, it's important to describe the context in a bit more detail. This teaching was conducted in a county facility, a context which provides some unique teaching challenges. County facilities typically house inmates with relatively short lengths of incarceration, 2 years or less, and limited opportunities for rehabilitative supports. Such facilities present complex educational challenges in the areas of second language instruction, basic literacy, high school equivalency preparation, and career planning. Programs in these areas are often addressed by local volunteer educators, who, while committed, typically struggle to negotiate their educative roles in a context offering little practical, theoretical, or collegial support. Social learning theory provides a helpful lens through which we might better understand the socially embedded nature of learning. Such socially embedded learning serves as the basis of identity construction. This is very much the case in teaching, an activity profoundly embedded within specific contextual and historical settings. The notion of communities of practice was first presented by Lev and Wenger and popularized in the areas of business and industry. Communities of practice are groups of people who share a concern or a passion for something they do and learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. In such groupings, Learning is often not the intent, but results as an incidental part of the group's interactions. According to Wenger, communities of practice share a domain of interest that is intense, implying a commitment to the domain and a subsequent shared competence that distinguishes members from other people. They share a community of members who pursue competence within their domain, sharing information and collaborating and discussing their mutual pursuit. And they share a practice where members are practitioners who develop a shared repertoire of resources, experiences, stories, tools, and ways of addressing recurring problems. A key characteristic of communities of practice is what Lave and Wenger call legitimate peripheral participation. Legitimate peripheral participation is simply the process by which newcomers are included in a community of practice, including changing patterns of participation and the transformation of identity. Identity formation thus plays a central role in this process, both as it relates to the formation of the person and as it relates to the creation and use of markers of membership, rites of passage, and social categories. You'll remember that this case study utilized in-depth interviews, participant journals, and classroom observations as the primary means of data collection. Interviews were analyzed using the constant comparative method, with journal entries and observations informing themes and conclusions. From this process, four themes emerged in relation to teachers' educational practice and professional identity formation. The first dealt with issues of experience and expectation, both in relation to teaching and to the context of this work. None of the 8 participants had experience working or teaching in a correctional facility. Nevertheless, all had engaged in some form of non-formal educational practice, ranging from pastoral work to corporate training and development. Yet from the outset, several of the participants perceived these past experiences as non-relevant to their correctional work. All indicated a feeling of unpreparedness that they perceived was affirmed by conversations with supervisory staff from the public schools and prison personnel. Said one, "I felt like teaching in the jail was something completely new, and it was. But the message was that I needed to keep my guard up, that my students were unlike anything I'd ever experienced, and that I couldn't understand it, that my prior teaching just wasn't going to be anything like this." Moreover, their expectations were largely shaped by the current crop of reality television shows that depict prisons as highly violent, extremely dangerous contexts for teachers and rehabilitative staff. And while county facilities do indeed house violent and dangerous inmates, the majority are incarcerated for nonviolent offenses, and all of those participating in educational programs must first earn their inclusion through good behavior over a period of time. Participants noted that they rarely interacted with prison rehabilitative staff or the administrators responsible for this work. Their primary point of contact was with security personnel who only reinforced the perception of looming danger and distrust. Some of this came as a result of the orientation process and the mixed messages sent during what was a brief but powerful initiation into the facility. Both the school district and the jail conducted their own orientations, each lasting approximately 1 hour. As would be expected, school personnel focused more on pedagogical and interpersonal issues, keeping lessons focused, maintaining professional distance with students, utilizing the whiteboard to provide clear examples. Jail personnel, on the other hand, focused almost exclusively on the facility and its processes, procedures for entering and exiting the facility, how to call for assistance in the case of an emergency, proper attire, and maintaining safe, appropriate distances with students. The result was that many were left with a strong perception that they needed to be careful in their work, careful in their physical safety, careful not to alienate or set off their students, careful not to expect too much given their students' short sentences and limited abilities. Said one participant, I went into this because I really felt like I could help someone see their own abilities and possibilities. What I heard was that I couldn't trust anyone, and that they were only killing time. The messages were really mixed. These people need a chance, but they're likely to be back here anyway. As a result, the two broader goals mentioned by all participants as their primary reasons for engaging in correctional education to help change student perceptions of themselves as learners and to stretch their own skills and abilities as teachers were left unchallenged and exchanged for modest programmatic objectives and the important but unsatisfying outcome that everyone went home safe and that prison processes were undisturbed. Furthermore, all of these themes were arrived at under the ever-present specter of issues relating to power and control over curriculum, classroom management, physical appearance and behavior, and expectation. Participants universally expressed that they believed their teaching abilities remained constricted by both spoken and unspoken forms of control. Said one, just coming in the place lets you know that you're not in a normal situation. I get that. But you have to put a great deal of effort into making it feel normal, relaxed, collegial, friendly even. Even the inmates can't believe that there's not something in it for me other than the experience. Everyone seems unwilling to take a flyer and really commit. Past failure, past mistakes, not sure what it is, but everyone's kind of holding back or being held back. As I mentioned earlier, the complexity of county jails creates some unique challenges for correctional educators. Short periods of incarceration mean that students come and go relatively quickly. The economics of corrections makes the housing of state inmates, generally convicted of more serious crimes and facing longer sentences, and federal prisoners, typically illegal aliens awaiting deportation, something that many county facilities have embraced. Furthermore, rural county jail administrators and educators have shared with me their sense that the rural residents they serve do not see the rehabilitation of inmates as the facility's primary role. Rather, the focus remains punitive, with incarceration a form of retribution for criminal behavior. In addition, the site for this research does not include any professional staff exclusively responsible for inmate education, basic or otherwise. While explained away as being economically infeasible, it also speaks to a larger challenge faced by correctional educators worldwide, the challenge of developing correctional education into a viable and important profession. When examining the themes expressed in participant interviews, journals, and actions through the lens of communities of practice, a recognizable practice seems evident. Nevertheless, the field's domain and community are difficult to recognize. Participants express little connection to a broader group of like-minded educators who could foster the type of identification inherent in a domain. Now, this is not to say that correctional educators have not and cannot create communities of practice, but that rural county jails represent specific educational challenges that make their creation difficult, particularly for those serving in volunteer capacities. To facilitate this, groups providing educational services should better utilize existing professional organizations, aspects of social media, and local nonprofit and governmental networks to develop sites for shared information, creative collaborations, advocacy initiatives, and the development of a unique and recognizable competence. Such work will require that participants develop both subject competency and a critical educational practice that recognizes and challenges repressive attitudes, policies, and practices restricting educational opportunity and limiting teacher creativity. I very much appreciate your taking the time to listen to my work, and I'd be happy to chat or answer any questions that you might have via email. Thanks.